very much. Merci beaucoup, dear Presidents, cher Pascal, cher Christian. Maybe since I understand we are a little bit running short of time, I maybe will have to do this in English. Pascal, do you?
You can do it. You can do it in French for the next 5 minutes.
But maybe it will be a bit longer than 5 minutes because you allow me. I heard 7 minutes, so maybe I will take.
Okay, so you can start in French for 5 minutes and then 2 minutes in English. Let's start.
Bon, alors en tout cas, je voudrais vraiment.
Very well. In which case, I'd like to start by thanking everybody very much indeed. Thank you to you, President Pascal Christian, for this excellent initiative. It really is something that we all warmly welcome. It is extremely useful indeed. It is an exercise in transparency and democracy. I've been in charge of the task force for some 2 weeks now, at the request of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, in order to ensure that all of the manufacturing companies that you've heard from today will be able to live up to this challenge. It is indeed a challenge in order to deliver all of the doses required, not only for our citizens, but also beyond our borders. This is also something which is extremely useful to hold such a hearing. I'm grateful to you for it. And perhaps I'll preface my comments by saying that, as you're aware, I've been in touch on a daily basis, day and night, in fact, with all of the CEOs that you've had at this hearing from the 6 largest pharma companies worldwide. I also want to thank them very much indeed, because they're doing a very tough job. I've told them that, and I've set up a team in order to live up to the task that the task force requires of me. We want to ensure that we hit our targets. That's our top priority. I know it's extremely difficult. It is an unprecedented challenge in the pharmaceutical industry. It's never been done before. I've told them that, and I restate that here before the Parliament. So I want to support them together with my team in order to live up to that challenge and ensure that that feat can be achieved. I want to turn now to the EU's vaccine strategy. You've talked about it at some length in the last few hours. Firstly, just a few words. Of course, the MEPs are on the front line. Questions, concerns, and the need for transparency comes into you first and foremost. And I think today is clear evidence of the need for that transparency. It is vital. Information must be provided in real time as soon as it is available to us. Transparency, solidarity has allowed us to get all of this up and running, but equally we need to win back people's trust in order to hit our targets. So the vaccine strategy then was a 2-stage process, signature of the contracts. You've talked about that at length. I won't dwell on that. But from the Commission side, when we signed the contracts, nobody knew which pharma company would come up with a working vaccine first. Nobody knew that, and I would contend that even the pharma companies themselves didn't know if they'd be able to supply a working vaccine by the deadline that was set. They have a wealth of experience, as do we, but it normally takes 3 to 5 years. We've done it in 10 months. It's a great feat. As I say, once we have the vaccine, we'll have more than one, and they are working. You've heard from the CEOs of all of the pharma companies. These vaccines are working. Of course, they've had to adapt. It's easy for some technologies like the mRNA to adapt to variants working upstream, and I'll get to that in due course. But my clear message is that rolling out the manufacturing industrial strategy has been very complex, and we are on hand to support them in that effort. Figures at global level, I think it's important. Of course, we try and communicate figures frequently to ensure that they are widely known. We have last week's figures Fortunately, production's being ramped up all the time, but last week we had about 180 odd doses produced worldwide. A little more than 50 million went to the US, 40 million were produced in China, 33 million produced in Europe. That is the reality of the situation. We're now over 40 million because production's increased in the last week. It's a question of how you look at things, of course. You look at one country like Israel, for example, 9 million inhabitants. In Israel, 3.4 million Israelis have already been vaccinated. We've heard about that. It's important to bear in mind the context, the fact that the data has been used by Pfizer. That's why that contract was signed with Israel. Imagine doing that in Europe. So these are important points I wanted to stress, but we're only at the outset, at the start of this race. Of course, it's something of a sprint, and it's absolutely vital that we ensure, on the one hand, that we're able to help pharma companies to ramp up their production capacity. We have a very clear vision of what's happening at European level. Of course, plants are producing the drug substance in Europe. We have about 4 million doing fill and finish, 20 odd in other production, and the strategy that's been adopted, because once again, for vaccination to take place, it normally takes between 4 to 5 years to set up a plant from scratch. In the strategy, the EU strategy, we've asked these pharma companies to set all of this in contracts. Many of the plants didn't have experience in that. They had to find partners. BioNTech partnered with Pfizer because BioNTech itself didn't really have any manufacturing experience. Same goes for Moderna. Even though Moderna has started to develop its own manufacturing capacity, they're working with Lonza. We know that...
because thanking to the interpreters for helping us, they will leave now.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, as you know, AstraZeneca, I speak in English now. AstraZeneca has been the partner of Oxford in order to make sure that they will be able to provide the industrial resources which are needed. So that's where we are. And then, while selecting this, let's say, partnership in order to provide what is necessary for our European fellow citizens now, and of course, more than that, for our partner outside of Europe, and I will come back on this in a few minutes because I think it's extremely important. We have selected the right partnerships with companies having already a landscape in Europe, mainly being able to upscale this landscape because it helped us to do it much faster than if they had to start from scratch. Usually, when you upgrade a plant which is already existing, a pharmaceutical plant, to deliver this kind of product or vaccines, it could take up to 2 years. And now the objective is to do it in less than 5 months. So that's another, and some say that it is like a little bit, I don't like this comparison, but I heard this many times, an economy of war, at least in terms of logistics, in terms of making sure to achieve this unbelievable ramping up. Yes, I could tell you that this is something which requires a lot of follow-up and a lot of resources. And by the way, I decided to go myself on the ground as soon as I have been tasked by President von der Leyen. I visited many factories from by the way, our 3 partners today. And I could tell you that what I saw is really reassuring. I can see that the yield in terms of production is really increasing, improving for every single partner. Of course, we are not yet here, and it's normal. I've been myself, as you know, an industrialist, so I know that it's extremely difficult to ramp up a factory. Sometimes you may have an issue or problem. This is why it's important also to have stocks to make sure that we will be able to produce on a more predictable basis what is necessary. But this being said, I could tell you that so far I think that what I see on the ground is matching more or less what the commitment, of course, that these companies took signing their contract.
Merci. Thierry, could you go to your conclusion, please?
It's not a guarantee yet, but I'm more confident. This being said, my view today is that with everything I see in terms of ramping up, we will be probably at a capacity in Europe around year and let's say within the next 12 to 18 months at more than 2.5 billion doses. The capacity in Europe, in continental Europe, will be probably ahead of 2.5 billion doses, which is extremely important. But now the second thing that we need to control very carefully is the supply chains. That's absolutely mandatory. With my team now, we are working with every single company, the 6 companies you audited today, to make sure that we will be able to anticipate what is needed, because I know and they know that we will have to follow this very carefully. Last point, we need to work closely with the US. That's absolutely mandatory. We are only US and us. We have the only capacity to be able to provide what is needed, of course, for our fellow citizens, but also for the planet. And supply chains are, of course, global. A lot in Europe, some also in the US, and vice versa. So that's why I'm advocating that we will be able to do this strongly together, because at the end of the day, we have, of course, the same objective. The last point, and I'll bring my conclusion, Europe autonomy will lead to also to a global solidarity. So I'm convinced that in Q3, Q4, we will reach what is needed for our European fellow citizens, and then we need to think very quickly to the rest of the world, of course, our neighbors, and also our African friends. And that's really something that I hope that we'll be able to speak in